Mr Hollowbone. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship today, and I congratulate the honourable member for Rutherglen and Hamilton West. He has spoken very well. He's spoken with passion and conviction, and he has been very thoughtful, and I've been delighted with the tone that he has set for the debate. I would wish to take the debate in a slightly different direction in relation to public policy as far as defence industry and diversification goes, because I wish to make reference specifically to the STUC campaign to set up or to encourage the SNP Scottish Government to set up a defence diversification agency. Because I believe that that approach to defence diversification, as opposed to the very thoughtful speech of the honourable gentleman, is quite simplistic and frankly regrettable. It's not only mistaken and misguided as a point of view that the government is best placed to tell business how to operate, but from an ideological blinkered point of view, the way that the left approaches this vitally important area of public policy is lacking. And it's not often, Mr Hollowbone, that I would choose to quote from the Morning Star. And it's not often, frankly, that I've even perused a copy of the Morning Star. But on the 15th of April, I know the members opposite are disappointed to hear I'm not a regular subscriber, but on the 15th of May, they ran a story about the vote at the STUC Annual Congress that called on the SNP government, quote, to establish a defence diversification agency to promote a fair and sustainable shift away from nuclear weapons. And it went on to report, and I'm quoting from the Morning Star, this will be a first and perhaps only occasion I will do this, but professionals' union prospect and the General Union GMB opposed the motion, saying it sent the wrong message to defence workers. The GMB Scotland delegate John Dolan, a Scotstoun shipyard convener, said, "This motion is not in the real world of work. These people have worked in these industries for years, keeping you, your children and your grandchildren safe. How many jobs have been created by defence diversification? This is a con," he said. "Where is the Saudi Arabia of renewables we were promised 10 years ago by Alex Salmond and the SNP government?" End of quote. Well, I don't know John Dolan. Perhaps other members here do. But I do want to repeat his line, because I think it's a very important line, Mr Hollowbone. These people have worked in these industries for years, keeping you, your children and your grandchildren safe. And I absolutely agree with the honourable gentleman in his opening speech that we should be proud of the defence sector in Scotland. As he mentioned, the UK defence spends £1.6 billion with Scottish industry each year, supporting at least 10,000 high-value jobs in the Scottish economy. And yes, I will give way.
Thank you. I thank the honourable member for giving me. He may be interested to know that if he buys a Morning Star today, he'll find a column in the name of my good self on blacklisting, and I recommend it to him. But can I suggest to him that if he is, as he claims, he's so concerned at the views of shipyard workers in the Clyde and what they're saying at STUC, that he also listens to them and does he support them, that the fleet solid support ships should be built in the UK and not put out into international competition.
Well, I'm grateful to the honourable gentleman for his intervention, and I'm not at all surprised, Mr Hollowbone, to learn that the honourable gentleman writes a column in the Morning Star. I'd have been disappointed if he had said anything other than that. And of course, I wish that all of the defence contract work that's available should remain in the UK and support high-value UK jobs and advance our technical expertise in the area of shipbuilding. Of course I do. And I'm no doubt the Minister will address that issue in his speech. But I do wish to pay tribute to the people who work for businesses that have invested in Scotland, like Babcock, BAE Systems, Leonardo, Thales has been mentioned, Raytheon, Rolls Royce, etc. All these major contractors and others operating in Scotland. And I have heard members of this House speak in disparaging terms of these businesses in their constituencies, Mr Hollowbone. And I'd like to make it clear that if any members of this House don't want these businesses and these workers in their constituencies, I can tell you that I would be absolutely delighted that if they were to come to Stirling. Stirling has a long association with our armed forces, and Stirling has a proud connection with our servicemen and women and those who support them in the supply chain that these industries represent. And that connection is symbolised by Stirling Castle. And as I said, I don't know John Dolan, but he did capture some of the pride of the people that work in these industries. And I am proud of the workforce. For example, at Her Majesty's Naval Base Clyde at Faslane, many of whom actually are my constituents. And I would say to each of them, if I could, Mr. Hollowbone, in Mr. Dolan's words, thank you for keeping me, my children and my grandchildren safe. Thank you for defending our country and our freedoms. Scotland is proud of you. Now, in my own constituency, defence contracts support many jobs, and especially FES, who are a principal electrical contractor, and work on the new Navy ships that have been built on the Clyde and Emerson. They also have significant defence contracts. And speaking of FES, they have made a huge investment in their apprenticeship programmes. They run their own academy. And hundreds of skilled workers, electricians, have benefited from FES's commitment to them, and also from the Ministry of Defence commitment to Scotland. And while some on the left may approach this from a pacifist point of view, built on deeply held beliefs, and I respect that, of course I do. And some of the left are more pragmatic, seeing the high-value jobs that are done as a vital strategic part of Scotland's economy, such as the honourable gentleman in his speech. But the SNP position on this is a far more craven position. They know that the defence sector, as was outlined by the honourable gentleman in his speech, would be destroyed in the event of independence. And so they use this device, this concept of defence diversification, as a way of distracting people, because the truth is that the SNP really don't care much about the jobs or about defence. They just care about independence, as was seen at their conference at the weekend there in Edinburgh. In that separatist vision, Scotland's workers, savers and pensioners would give out the pound for a valueless currency yet to be named. And there would be no frigates to be built on the Clyde. That's if they ever get their way. I will give way again.
Well, I thank him for giving way. I find it extraordinary that he's accusing myself and others in the SNP group of not caring about defence jobs, given that I meet the shop stewards in the Clyde shipyards on a regular basis, and they know my view on things. Would he care to withdraw or seek or perhaps clarify what he's suggesting when he was... because he was pointing at myself, Mr. Hollybone, when he made those outrageous remarks.
I'm not sure I was specifically pointing at the honourable gentleman, but let me be absolutely clear. Those who espouse separatism in Scotland know the consequences would be the loss of those jobs and the technology that goes with those jobs and the know-how that goes with the jobs and the added value that goes with those jobs on the Clyde, and they know that only too well. Scotland isn't going to have a Royal Navy.
I think he's making a very valid point, because it's not just the military that would be taken away, it's in the hard power, the physical ships, the tanks, but it would also be MI5, MI6, all the other myriad of security services that actually embed and are supported by the United Kingdom. So I think he's making a very valid point, and I wish the SNP could see it too.
And I'm grateful to my honourable friend. And the SNP cynically swallow this idea as well. They cynically swallowed the idea of being in NATO, for example, Mr. Hollowbone, a nuclear defensive alliance, because they know that Scotland will never wear pacifism. They want the Faslane gone, and they want the nuclear deterrent gone.
I'm most grateful to you. Would my honourable friend agree that it's not just a question of defending the United Kingdom's territorial waters and indeed our contribution to NATO, but much further afield? We forget that the maintenance of a blue water navy is absolutely vital for trade. One only has to look at the Red Sea. I used to ship coffee from the port of Tanger through the Suez Canal to Europe and indeed around the world. Piracy in the Red Sea was rife. Ships were being hijacked until the European Union force and other forces, led until recently by the United Kingdom, was there with ships built in Scotland.
I'm grateful to my honourable friend for his intervention. And Mr. Holloway, I would sign up to beating swords into ploughshares every day of the week. But the lesson of history is that we defend the peace by being strong. And I am proud that the United Kingdom is committed to spending our 2% commitment on defence. We have obligations in the alliance that we meet. Now, I shall move on very quickly and conclude. I recently had the privilege of attending the naming ceremony for HMS Tamar, the latest second-generation river-class ship on the Clyde. And it was a magnificent ship, and it's built in the best traditions of Scottish shipbuilding for the Royal Navy, Scottish engineers, fitters, designers, programmes, a whole host of highly skilled professionals. Now, Mr. Hollowbone, you should have heard the pride in the way that the workforce spoke about the work they do. And they're fully justified in that pride, because they're making a massive contribution to the security of our country, and they know that, and the security of our servicemen and women who sail in these ships, and what they do, as outlined by my honourable friend in his intervention. Mr Hollowbone, Scotland's contribution to the defence sector and our Scottish servicemen and women are a matter of national pride for all of us. The men and women who serve alongside our service personnel are to be saluted, and I will long remember the visit I made in my own constituency to people who work for Babcock, who had got mechanics and engineers, who had gone to Afghanistan, who had gone and previously to Iraq, to be there with our service people, to service their armoured vehicles and keep them on the road. They must not have their role and their sacrifice reduced by an ideological-driven attack on a proud and vital industry.